Oh, we're going to talk all about the kids, including Cutter Gauthier, on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, your team every day. I'm your host, Jason J.D. Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade, and thank you for making this your first listen of the weekend. We are now a couple of days removed from the Anaheim Ducks concluding their 23-24 campaign, but hockey's not done yet for the Ducks organization. First off, the San Diego Gulls do have a pair of games this weekend against the Coachella Valley Firebirds. Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. at Acrisure Arena in Palm Desert, California. I will definitely be at Sunday's game because I'm the public address voice for the Firebirds. But in the meantime, let's talk about all the kids. And the reason I'm doing this is because I wanted to go in depth about Cutter Gauthier. And also, we have a little bit of a video from Locked On NHL Prospects that happened to talk about Cutter Gauthier recently. So I will address that, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about Cutter Gauthier in the second and third portions of this podcast. But we've got to talk about the rest of the kids that have been a part of the Anaheim Ducks or been a part of the San Diego Gulls. Could be Anaheim Ducks coming soon. Because I should point out first, now that Jakob Silfverberg has retired and now that there are some free agents that probably will not be re-signed, there's going to be some open spots. We still don't know if Isaac Lundestrom is going to return to the Ducks. We don't know if Max Jones is going to return. Brett Leason, probably not. Bo Grew, probably not. Ben Myers, most likely not. So there's going to be some open spots. And right now, there's not a whole lot of players that are signed, except for a lot of the young guys. And I'm talking about guys that are, for the sake of this podcast, we'll say 23 and younger. Let's go on the list, shall we? Trevor Zegras, Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier, Sam Colangelo, Mason McTavish. Yeah. Oh, there's more, by the way. Jackson Lacombe, who is a free agent, so he may or may not return to the Ducks. Pavel Mintyukov. Yeah, he'll be back. Olin Zellweger. Lukasz Dostal, who, by the way, I think still should be starting more games next season. Then you've got all these guys down in San Diego. Nikita Nestorenko, who's gotten a hat trick this season. How about Sasha Pastujov, who also had a hat trick this season? By the way, those two got a hat trick on the same game. So Nestorenko and Pastujov. By the way, love seeing Sasha out there. You also have Nathan Gaucher. You also have Josh Lapina, who's been pretty solid. Braden Tracy. Yeah, like that. Jackson Weeb. We kind of forget about Jackson Weeb a little bit. We also forget about Judd Caulfield. And also Jan Mysak, who's made a name for himself in San Diego this season. And then you've got like Drew Hellison. I've loved watching Drew Hellison's game this season. He looked very good against the Firebirds last week. And I expect more of the same on this pair of games against Coachella Valley this coming weekend. And Tristan Luneau and Noah Warren. I want to talk about those two for a hot minute because Tristan Luneau and Noah Warren have both been playing in juniors. And unfortunately for Tristan Luneau, he has been injured most of this season. And that's a shame because I really believe in Tristan Luneau big time. He had a fast start with the Ducks. He got his first career NHL goal very quickly, played a handful of games in San Diego, then was supposed to play at WJC's, but wound up with an infection, and he has not played since. Luneau's been out for a while now, and it is expected that he is going to return at 100% strength next season. And I did report a couple months ago, like it came out like within the hour, with this was a French publication that Noah Warren was likely going to be out for the rest of the season, and it appears that that's the case. And that stinks for Tristan Luneau, who I believe strongly in his future. And we saw how fast he moves. We saw how good he is with the puck. His puck awareness is very good. Speed, very good. For someone of his size, he's got a pretty good size. 6'2", looks more like 6'3" or 6'4" on the ice. A buck 88. I suspect that he will bulk up a little bit. I mean, I see him as being 6'3", 190, 195. He's got a pretty good body. Good skating for a defenseman of that size. That's something that you want to see. So I think that Tristan Luneau, if he returns completely healthy, he has as good a shot of making the Ducks roster on defense as, frankly, anyone else. So I would hope that Luneau makes the roster. As far as Noah Warren, he has been on juniors most of the season. Noah Warren has been playing with Victoriaville. He has been playing in the playoffs. So he won't be playing for the Ducks. He didn't play for the Ducks. Not going to play for San Diego this season. But it is expected that he is going to sign his ELC next season. That is, or rather, he's going to have his first games from his ELC next season, since he is still playing in the Quebec League playoffs right now. I could get that out. I can talk, folks. And as far as Noah Warren is concerned, he's been one of the bigger surprises in juniors, and he's only 19 years old. He has a potential of being a second or third pairing defenseman. I think his ceiling is second pairing. And I think that's why I like Noah Warren and Tristan Luneau a little bit more than Jamie Drysdale, which is why I'm okay with that trade. The Ducks do have quite a bit of talent on defense, a lot of young talent that does still need to develop a little bit, but it's there. Noah Warren, big-bodied, he's already 6'4", a buck 93. He's going to bulk out to 200 pounds easily, and also has pretty decent moves, like good skating ability, but also he's got a good shot, folks. When he is able to get that shot off, it's a pretty good one. But as far as defense, he is responsible defensively. He will play that 200-foot game. And that's what you want out of your defenseman. So there's so much talent, like young talent on this Ducks team. It's going to be interesting to see what the Ducks do as far as who they pair with Cam Fowler, who they pair with Radko Gudas. Now, I know there's Ducks fans saying, oh, Cam Fowler has been awful. We got to get rid of him. Yes, I know Cam Fowler has not had a terribly decent... Okay, he's had a bad season, folks. Let's call a spade a spade. Cam Fowler did not have a good season, and I know some fans want to buy out Cam Fowler's contract. It wouldn't be wise to do that with 3 years left. So it depends. So it's really who's going to pair with Cam Fowler and who's going to pair with Radko Gudas. Fowler is usually on the left side, so I did like seeing some of the younger guys with Cam Fowler this season. But I think if I had to choose one of those right defensemen, Luneau or Warren, wow, that's tough. And I'll tell you why that's tough. Noah Warren, even though he's younger, is a little bit more defensively responsible than Tristan Luneau. Not like, it's pretty comparable, but I would say out of the two of them, he's slightly more defensively responsible based on what I've seen this year in juniors. Tristan Luneau, I think, could pair well with Cam Fowler as well, but it's tough. It's really tough to compare the two. So I'm just going to go, for the sake of argument, for the long term, pair Noah Warren with Cam Fowler. Tristan Luneau, I guess you could put him with No, you can't put him with Radko Gudas because Radko's a righty. So how about one of those with Pavel Mintyukov? And then you have Olin Zellweger. Maybe you go Minty, Gudas, and then Zells and one of those other defensemen. the Ducks don't need to get someone else on defense, but I think it would be wise to get another veteran to go with them. That way you could at least compete for that spot. And this is also good news for the Gulls, because whoever does not make the team with Anaheim is going to be sent down to San Diego. And San Diego already has like some pretty solid defensemen. Drew Hellison, I love Drew Hellison so much in San Diego. He has looked very good over the last month. And it's kind of a shame that Drew Hellison isn't going to get as much of a shot with Anaheim. Now, Drew did get I think it was like 3 games with Anaheim last season and never made it to Anaheim this season. And yes, he's a little bit older. In fact, he's 23 years old right now. He might end up being a tweener kind of player in the long run, but mostly with San Diego. And that is not bad for the Gulls. Not at all. So that's kind of a look at some of the young guys, particularly in defense. I know I want to talk more about the forwards, but the defenseman is what I wanted to focus on the most. And I also want to focus, like, for one more minute on Jackson Lacombe. Do the Ducks bring back Jackson Lacombe for another 2-3 years? He is a restricted free agent. He is still under control of the Anaheim Ducks. I will ask you, would you keep Jackson Lacombe on the roster? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments whether you would re-sign and keep Jackson Lacombe, knowing that there's a slew of young defensemen still coming through the pipeline. All right, we're going to head into the first intermission. And for the second portion of this podcast, it's going to go right into a conversation with Hadi Kalakeche from Locked On NHL Prospects. It's going to be a good one, folks. So, be sure to check that out. And also part of that was Sebastian High. So you have Hadi Kalakeche and Sebastian High that are talking all about Cutter Gauthier. And then after that, I will give my response to that and talk a little bit more about my thoughts on Cutter Gauthier. Stay locked in. And now a brief word from Policy Genius. Now, Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. And Policy Genius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl.
So let's get things started here with Cutter Gauthier signing in Anaheim. This is an interesting one, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Cutter Gauthier kind of evolves with the Anaheim Ducks. Now, he kind of forced this move, was not happy with how things were going in Philly, did not want to be part of that organization. That caused a lot of stir up, a lot of debates, and I think we both stand on the side of Gauthier on this of like, listen, if you're going to draft out of the NCAA, this is a risk, and there's a reason why players go this route. A lot of players have the option to go a different route, to go to the OHL and kind of basically be stuck with that team. Otherwise, they have to re-enter the draft. But with the NCAA route, you have a lot more liberty to move around, to make your choices, to land in the right organization. So how do you see the fit with Gauthier in Anaheim?
It's a very smooth one. I mean, this is an organization that has been starting to really hoard talent in the last 5 years, and they have a lot of players that also play with that physical edge in their forward core specifically. I mean, Mason McTavish comes to mind pretty quickly on that front, and adding Cutter Gauthier to the mix to contribute on that front as well as the goal scoring potential. And he's a very strong puck handler. He's going to be a really intriguing complementary piece, potentially on a top line in Anaheim for quite a long time. This is a very nice fit for the 6'2", 194-pound left wing / center. I think his projection is most likely going to be on the wing, but I'm not quite sure where you stand on that front with
Yeah,
Gauthier.
yeah, I agree. He's more of a winger, but the thing is, he wants to play center, and he's made that clear in Philly. That's part of the reason why he was moved. Is that Philly couldn't guarantee him a future at center. So I'd be surprised if Anaheim makes that push for him to go to the wing. I think at the end of the day, the reason why he ended up in Anaheim was because he wanted to play center, and probably there are already conversations with Anaheim about where he's going to end up playing at the NHL level. I see him as being more effective on the wing, but I can understand why an NHL team would want to play him at center. He's a big body, he's physical, he can win face-offs, he's fairly good at it. And he plays a decent. I mean, I've really liked the progression in his defensive game. He's constantly getting his stick in the right lanes, constantly making pushes to end up in the right spots. We saw it really well in the BC versus Denver game in the NCAA championship. Like, there were multiple times where he stopped, high danger chances with really good stick positioning, especially on the penalty kill, especially in the D zone at 5-on-5. He also defends the rush fairly well with that movement, that mobility. So, in terms of the skill set, like, obviously the best place for Cutter Gauthier in terms of where he hits his maximum potential for me is still as like a top six, possibly even top line kind of complementary scorer. This finisher who kind of puts the finishing touch on a lot of plays, who moves off the puck, finds the right spots, plays with a puck carrier, a playmaker, guys who can find him in those soft pockets. But, what do you think about this idea of Cutter Gauthier really kind of forcing his way to center in an NHL team? Do you see that as kind of I don't know, like a sign that maybe he sees his potential as being higher than we do, perhaps, as kind of maybe a top line center, as maybe a bona fide top 6C? Do you see it as a potential fact, or where do you stand on how effective he can be at center?
Well, I hope every single hockey player sees their potential as higher than what outside voices are saying it is to start off. But I do like, I think with Gauthier, if he really really does see himself as a center and only a center moving forward, I don't think he picked the right team to be traded to here with the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, they have
Yeah.
Mason McTavish and Leo Carlsson. That's already a pretty great 1-2 punch moving forward, and I think that being able to play with one of those two players long term on their wing as a supporting scorer with a bit more room to work with, a bit more, I guess, leeway in terms of sure being able to contribute defensively, but not needing to be that first man back, dropping all the way down in the defensive zone, and being able to spark those rush chances would really contribute to the offensive potential for Gauthier. But I'm very curious to see what Anaheim does with this player, because they've shown in the past couple of seasons that they develop their young players like very few other NHL teams. And we saw that with Leo Carlsson to start this season, where they weren't playing him every game because they wanted him to get some NHL reps, but not like work him to death in his first NHL season. And
Yeah.
while Gauthier certainly has a stronger foundation of stamina here, and I mean, it's end of the season. He's going to play a game or two before the season's over. But I'm very curious to see what Anaheim does here, because again, this is a player who scored 38 goals and 65 points through 41 NCAA games this season, which is pretty wacky production. And of course, that Boston College team was just absolutely stacked with talent. But
Yeah.
Gauthier was certainly a leading force on that front. And I think that if I had to guess, it's more likely he ends up as that like high end second line scorer than like the first line variation of that on the wing. But there's
Yeah.
definitely a far higher likelihood of that now in my eyes than I thought there was at the draft. And I had him ranked relatively low in that draft class, which I would certainly change a little bit with hindsight. I think I had him ranked in like the 20 to 25 range, which was a little bit pessimistic if we're going to be honest here. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's progressed
No,
very well.
for sure. And I remember us having that debate, that conversation before the draft. I had him ranked higher. I had him in the 10 to 15 range, I believe, or 15, 12 to 17, something like that. I don't remember exactly where he ended up, but somewhere in that range. And I remember being one of the first champions of Cutter Gauthier. Like, I remember very early on, receiving messages from scouts, from other organizations, after seeing my rankings, being like, what do you see in Cutter Gauthier that has you ranking him higher than Jimmy Snuggerud? Because that was basically the big conversation heading into the 2022 draft, was Cutter Gauthier or Jimmy Snuggerud, right? Between those two, who you pick. And for me, there was a clear gap, and it was mainly that consistent ability to just make himself really available to his teammates. Jimmy Snuggerud was a lot more of a puck carrier, a line breaker. Cutter Gauthier was he had a bit more of that classic power forward element, while still being able to kind of move off the puck and find soft pockets. And I like that combination of intensity, kind of power forward ability, and also that intelligence, that IQ, that soft skill to get in those small pockets. So for me, there wasn't much of a debate all year. And I saw a lot of the people that earlier on were kind of questioning the fact that Cutter Gauthier might be better than Jimmy Snuggerud. A lot of those guys actually texted me like around April, May, being like, "Oh yeah, no, absolutely, you're right," and that's why he ended up getting picked 5th overall by Philly. But the whole process was really interesting for Philly because, from their perspective, Cutter Gauthier, gets on the stage, says, "Oh, I'm born to be a Flyer." 2 years later, changes his mind, and obviously a lot changed in those 2 years in Philly, not just in terms of what Cutter Gauthier, how Cutter Gauthier developed, and how he perceived himself and his spot within the organization, but also within Philly, so much changed. So that made it a lot more difficult for both teams to kind of see a path forward. But
Yeah,
I'm excited
for
to see
sure.
how yeah.
One question I wanted to lob out to wrap up the segment was just like, what are your production expectations for Gauthier next season in his full rookie season?
Oh, I'd say 40 points is reasonable and realistic. I don't think he reaches the 50-60, especially if he's not starting off on the top line with the likes of Mason McTavish and Troy Terry and all those guys. But I feel like there is a path forward for him in a middle six to get those 40 points, especially if he's playing, second power play, possibly even second penalty kill. He certainly has a skill.
Thanks to Hadi and Sebastian for their very good insight on the Cutter Gauthier signing and where he could fit with the Anaheim Ducks. Now, I will point out that they did record this right before his NHL debut. So I do want to kind of respond to that and give my own thoughts on Cutter Gauthier and actually devote an entire segment about Cutter Gauthier. So in his first game, he did get a very nice assist on the Jackson Lacombe goal, which is why I wanted to mention Jackson Lacombe, is, for that reason specifically. And I want to talk about Leo Carlsson for a few seconds. That play was all Leo Carlsson, but I got to give a lot of credit to Cutter Gauthier. So first off, I got to point out that his movement off the puck is, I think, really what could elevate his game. Okay? And that'll get him some solid middle 6 minutes down the line, because I don't think he's going to be a top, he won't be a top guy, not in the top line. But middle 6, I could see even next year. His ceiling, I think, could be that second line, because there's a lot of good talent on that first line. I know some folks are saying he should be a top line guy, but middle 6. So, for example, and I'll just give this example from his first NHL point. While Leo Carlsson did draw multiple defenders, and he did that very well, and on that play, Leo Carlsson was kind of spotted drawing a couple of guys going to the right side, to the left of, I forget who the goalie was, but going to the goalie's left. And while Leo drew multiple defenders, Cutter Gauthier split the D without the puck. So if you look back on that play, Cutter Gauthier is splitting through those two guys even though he doesn't have the puck. And then he finds himself in the Wayne Gretzky area, which I like to call it the Wayne Gretzky area, where he kind of parks himself behind the net. And he just is behind the net, just waiting patiently for an open pass as he received the puck from Leo Carlsson. So Leo Carlsson drew the defenders, got it to Cutter Gauthier, who was open in the behind the net area, in the Wayne Gretzky area. Then that's where he began to get the attention of Braden McNabb. And McNabb began to kind of motion towards Cutter. And this is where I praise Cutter Gauthier for his absolute patience. He held the puck for a couple of seconds and just waited. And finally, Gauthier saw that Jack Eichel was not picking up Jackson Lacombe. So Cutter Gauthier saw an opening, passed it right to Lacombe. The pass is made, and a perfect goal to get Cutter Gauthier his first NHL point. And while that speaks to Leo Carlsson's play, this also speaks to Cutter Gauthier, because if he can manage to keep getting those kind of assists and draw defenders to him and have the patience to see if someone is going to go to him. In this case, it was Braden McNabb and Jack Eichel that were kind of paying a little too much attention to Cutter Gauthier, and just that perfect pass. That was brilliant. Cutter Gauthier is an excellent passer, by the way. Let's not forget that Cutter Gauthier is very good off the puck, but also a great passer. I know that Hadi mentioned that he's very good defensively as well. That's something that I do want to see. I want to see a forward that is responsible defensively, someone that will get to the dirty areas, someone that will take control of the puck and take advantage of turnovers. That's something that you do want to see. However, I think that Cutter has more of the ability to be a finisher. I think it was Sebastian that pointed out, yeah, like he can finish, and I will kind of expound on that. This is something that the Ducks need, because that has been their biggest problem, is their inability to finish. This has plagued the Ducks for the last few years, where they kind of overpass, like pass. They don't really have a finisher right now. Like, they traded away, or guys have moved on. Like, their finishers, they're no longer on the team. Trevor Zegras, even though he is a good finisher, he's always been kind of pass first. Troy Terry, he is kind of a finisher, but he's also just an all-around type of player. So I wouldn't consider Troy Terry a finisher per se, but he can. Mason McTavish, he could be a finisher. But when you have someone with that kind of shot, that kind of snipe, someone that is not afraid to take a shot like Cutter Gauthier, then that does nothing but good for the Anaheim Ducks, and it gives them another weapon for defenders to kind of draw towards. Or maybe if Zegras is a little bit more aggressive towards the net, you could have Z draw two defenders, pass it to a wide open Cutter Gauthier, and he could just finish it. That's someone that you need on the Ducks in the long term. But now there's another question, something that I do want to bring up that was kind of talked about on the NHL Prospects portion. Does Cutter see himself as only a center? This is where I'm going to refer to the last game, because based on that game, not necessarily. Cutter Gauthier was in the lineup. He was on a wing with Leo Carlsson. Now, I agree that the Ducks are already stacked up the middle, because as of right now, you have Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras, Leo Carlsson, Isaac Lundestrom, if he returns. Those are your centers, and Ryan Strome also gets some reps up the middle. So maybe if Strome does play more center, then that would unfortunately make Isaac Lundestrom expendable at this point. Or he could be that fifth center for the Ducks in case someone is out, which is important to have. You want to have someone that is good up the middle. Or Strome could just play on a wing and keep Lundestrom on that fourth line, because it would look really weird to have one of McTavish, Zegras, Carlsson, or Strome on, like, one of them on the fourth line. And I think that's the importance of having someone like Lundestrom in your lineup, is you want a steady 4C. Kind of like Derek Grant was for a couple of seasons. Kind of like Sam Carrick was for a lot of this season. You need a steady presence on your fourth line center. So I think that's why I would keep Lundestrom. And I think that's why Cutter shouldn't see himself as only a center when you already have so much talent. And since we already saw that he works well on a wing, that would be in his best interest to stick with being a winger in the long term, especially if Carlson, Z, and McTavish are part of your future. So that's where I am with that. All right, we're going to wrap it up with my thoughts on Cutter Gauthier. I'm excited for the future for the Ducks. I'm excited with all those prospects that I talked about already. Cutter is going to be a fantastic piece to the Ducks' future, and I cannot wait for next season. Anyway, that's really it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, we have Gulls hockey later tonight, so hopefully I'll see you there. This podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, among others. You could follow me on Twitter X at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter X is at LO_Ducks. And make sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And what else? Email is lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. The mailbag will be open next week, so maybe start to get your questions in. And in the meantime, thank you all for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. And I hope to see you at Coachella Valley Sunday as well. Hope to see a lot of fans come out to that one for the final game of the regular season. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason JD Hernandez saying have a great rest of the weekend, folks. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.